All right, we're going to head out to the cloud in the sky here where, Warren, I hope I'm above the frozen land that I'm currently in. Woke up this morning, 5 a.m., minus 24 degrees, air temperature. And here in the frozen lakes, rivers of Minnesota, where we've got a lot of weird politics going on in our state lately. I got to tell you, Warren, that's not what this is about. But for somebody who's trying to detach from the media, you can't even do it off the grid next to a swamp in a river in Minnesota where it's frozen outside. Warren, how you doing?
Doing good, and you should have been down here this week. My daughter, of course, is the executive director at the Kansas Oil Museum, and she does a homeschool group every single week. And this week, they actually were talking about how to survive in the winter. And they were talking about how settlers used to survive in the winter. And anyway, my granddaughter broke her arm, so my daughter was trying to figure out how does she do this event. And I said, well, I can do it for you if you want. What are you talking about? And she told me what she was talking about, how to survive in the winter. And I said, well, I'll keep JC then, because the only advice I got for how to survive in the winter is go south.
It's a good way to go, man. I tell you, it's ridiculous. And I've said this before that when somebody called me, it was a 65 consecutive days below zero air temperature up here. And it was 2016, sixth coldest on record. We did a story, multiple stories in the Bakken oil field on how it was affecting the equipment, how diesel trucks were gelling up on the interstate. It was so cold. That's when I knew cold was cold. When a diesel semi truck gets stalled on the interstate because the air temperature is too cold outside, ladies and gentlemen, it is absolutely idiotic to be living in conditions like that. And I got a phone call when it was the first day above zero, and a friend of mine said, "It's so nice out, let's go ice fishing." And it was in that moment I realized I was the dumbest person on the planet, because it is so nice outside. Let's go fish on a frozen lake. That is the most. Anyway, so let's get into Landman here, season finale, as we extended our niceties and chats, because we were having a nice chat before we started hitting record on this, and we wanted to continue it on. But Warren, I got to tell you, man, they kind of really took a sharp turn. And this season, it's almost like season one did not exist. Season one was the test. It was like we were the test audience to see, is the public going to accept anything from oil and gas? And if we get Billy Bob in there, if we get Demi Moore makes one scene, episode 8, we can use her name all. Season one almost really made us, the oil people, and the public, let's not kid ourselves, almost like a guinea pig. It seemed like that's how I'm reading season two. How about you, man? What do you think?
Well, what I think is that you and I are absolutely horrible at predicting where this is going, because none of our predictions came true. I don't think. I don't think there's any way to. And that's the great thing about fiction, is it can go anywhere you want it to go. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's completely disconnected from season one. The cartel has completely disappeared. Besides a legitimate financer, there was just a few little statements here and there where they can bring it back. I don't know if they're just holding that to where if the ratings start dropping, then they bring the cartel back and blow everything up. I don't know what they're doing there, but yes, it's completely different storyline than it was season one.
I do think the next season is going to be very action packed and very much centered around rig safety, rig regulate. I think it's going to be onshore, offshore, a lot of rig stuff. I really do. And really the big takeaway, I guess, for me, and there was quite a few, and so I guess there's not one bigger than the other, really, but it seemed to set the stage that next season's going to be corporations and small business, independent contractors, independent oil companies, and big corporate, giant type things. Did you get that sense?
Yeah, I actually got the sense that the offshore uh, entire storyline is going to disappear, and it's just going to be completely focused on a war between Cammy, Demi Moore's character, and this new company that's now been started through embezzlement. And they're going to, have a war between them, keep it Midland and keep it off. Because I think, yeah, I thought a lot about that. I mean, you start filming offshore and you start bringing offshore, that's a pretty big investment on a TV show to film in two locations like that. So I kind of think this eliminates the offshore story. But all of my predictions so far have been completely wrong. So what do I know?
Well, we don't know much about writing TV. That's for sure. We became very clear about that. So, but we'll continue on with our speculation and opinions about the soap opera involved with Landman because that's where the fun is. But folding in the realities of the oil and gas industry, you just brought up a big one. Offshore expenses triple, at least double, Warren. I mean, you've got to, people have to helicopter there. They've got to take boats there. And then they've got elevator systems that are not like the elevator in any building you've ever been in. And so, even getting food, I've talked to a number of the supply chain and the subcontractors. My favorite one was the drug sniffing dog. They had to fly in on a helicopter just to give everybody an idea. Yeah, they do. They regulate out there on the oil rigs out, a mile off the coast of Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, and the drug sniffing dogs come in, the weapon sniffing dogs come in, and Warren, I actually think that could be some good storyline, in the oil and gas industry. You talked about that last week about how they really dropped the ball on the industry storylines, picked up on the interpersonal relationship storylines, and I think the gamble paid off because next season, if they go, excuse my language, balls to the wall. I'm not even sure if that's a bad language or if that's just a sports metaphor. But when it came from the '80s, so I assumed it had some sort of dirty back behind the smoke shed vibe. You know what I'm talking about there? By next season, they can go balls to the wall with a lot of the industry stuff because when I look at the first season, you had, deaths happen on site. This season, it was murder, legitimate murder, getting a guy out of murder because the optics were there. Because we're going to tell the jury how we're going to spin the optics right before their eyes. And you're going to be the receiving end of it, county and city. So let our guy off of murder. That was pretty real, Warren. That to me was probably the most real of the whole thing. What do you think about that? The murder storyline.
Well, I actually think that was a pretty real storyline from the standpoint of, a cop's job, a police officer's job, and when they're investigating is they don't know if that person knew each other, if they had a prior engagement, and that's what they're trying to figure out. And a lot of times the way that they try and figure it out is they try and leverage you to make you feel vulnerable so that you spill the beans and you share everything that you know. And so I think it was pretty realistic in how the lawyer came in, and she even admits on the outside, I basically bluffed them, and we'll see if they follow through on this or not. And so I thought it was pretty realistic on how that tends to happen.
The other part that I thought was real was the interpolitics with the police station. You had one, the right hand representing the pipeline company, and then you had the left hand representing the oil company, and they had to sort out their, which person is behind the scenes pulling the lever, if you will, which happens in every town. So this is nothing new here. But that I found that to be interesting. Like, oh, he's a big shot with a pipeline company, and then, well, he's the oil company. Well, okay, let's go to the chief. That part I think was pretty real too. But like I said, you can go to any town USA, and that same politics will exist.
Yes, absolutely. That's it is a very realistic scene, but again, one of those where it's bringing it's bringing it into the relational category rather than the oil and gas industry category. Even though you're talking about two different oil companies, you could replace those with any two companies that are in the same industry, and you're going to have the same thing.
I would beg to bet that developers would probably be number one in that that niche of let's go have the interpolitics in the police station, because usually that's the big dollars in any town USA is the development dollars in downtown and Renaissance zones and urban areas and et cetera, et cetera. So, but it is interesting that they did flip it into the oil and gas show. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And getting back to the corporation and the independent, which they're trying to present, that Tommy TTC oil and gas and cattle, which we'll get to that as well, is the small business, the mom and pop is what they're trying to portray that as. And then you've got the corporation. They're both backed by cartel money. That's the part that I think is absolutely hilarious. That I mean, are they just flat out saying that the banks are the cartel at the end of the day? Is that what they're trying to say? Because Tommy didn't go to a bank; he just went to the cartel. I mean, if you went to a bank and said, "We got 6 proven oil reserves, we want to start a company," they're probably going to do it if you got 45 years in the industry as a landman, Warren. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, but he can't do that because he's embezzling them. MTEX has
Oh, they'll look the other way at that. Come on.
MTEX has already put the money into it. He can't go to the bank with that paperwork. He can't go to the bank and share that.
They call that, what do you mean? They just call that progress. That's just, it's momentum. We got the wheels going. Go ahead.
He had to go back to the cartel because if he got the cartel to fund him, then that puts the cartel in the position of telling both companies what they can and can't do, and whether Cammy can go after Tommy and for embezzling these wells. I mean, this whole episode was about embezzlement, and he drove the MTEX truck after he'd been fired. He continued to drive the MTEX truck everywhere he went, flew on the MTEX plane. He took the MTEX wells, took all of their employees, even took the lawyer that didn't even like the oil industry last year. And so this whole thing was about an embezzlement.
Does that result in lawsuits very often in the oil and gas industry? And before you answer, in the media, it does a lot. I can think of 6 just, right down the road, and, the Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck triangle, right? Just in that little sauerkraut triangle of the upper Midwest. When you take a look at, I mean, when salespeople, for example, go to different companies, they used to come in at night and, Xerox and photocopy sales ledgers and contact sheets. And now it's just a thumb drive. It's a flash drive. It's digital. And, we've had in the media, people will leave. They'll take, a lot of times in sales, of course, because you have the relationships. And so you'll leave and you'll start your own. Maybe it's a local newspaper, one of those free shoppers you pick up at the grocery store. Maybe it's actually to compete with somebody. And so you have that. But in the media, if I can think of 6 off the top of my head, just, within a 3-hour protractor circle around the Fargo Moorhead area where I, got my experience, in the oil and gas industry, is this a common thing? Is this something where lawsuits will come out of it? Because you're right, Warren. I mean, he was driving the truck, he was using the plane. The amount of resources that you need to start a company and to get the momentum going, that's the difference right there. That's the difference. So go ahead. Sorry, I get chatty about this stuff.
No, I don't think stuff like this happens in the industry very often. I'm sure they're basing off a storyline where it has happened. I know people have tried to do stuff like this. Most of the time in the oil industry, though, what you're talking about in the media is the same thing. My background in commercial art and artists, it's where the idea of non-compete contracts came up, that you could not take away the clients of the company, which are almost never enforceable. But this is different because they're not taking away clients. They're not taking away, an account. they're actually taking a physical property, a well. They're taking a legally owned property away from a company. That doesn't happen very much. Yes, that would result in massive lawsuits. Tends what you tend to see happen more than that, especially here in Kansas. Kansas used to be filled with the major oil companies that were doing production way all the way back to 1915 when the majors really started growing. They built up. The wells here began to be depleted. We got into the marginal well category. All the majors left. And when all the majors left, then you had a lot of employees that worked for a major, geologist or production engineers or whatever, that had put together a nest egg where they could buy out parts of the company as they were pulling out of the state. And that happens a whole lot. And a lot of times you have these investors that go in with each other and then they fall on the outs with each other. And then you have lawsuits where they're fighting over the company, but they were both legitimately in the company to begin with, or they were both investing in a well together to begin with. This is something completely different where it's just outright theft, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think it's and I've said this for years in the
It's the oil industry becoming the cartel.
so and when I was doing talk radio up in Fargo for a number of years, I was more on the producer side and I did the night show and that sort of thing. But I was kind of the token libertarian to, when they needed a libertarian point of view, I would put on my kind of extreme goggles and go in there and I'd Ron Paul it at the end of the day because I mean that was honestly where I got my motivation from was like, okay, Ron Paul is the most libertarian person I've seen in my lifetime that's been accepted mainstream. So that was kind of the point of view I would bring in. And, I suppose I agreed with 90% of it, maybe 75%, depending on the issue, because I am pretty much a libertarian at the core. But, there's a lot of people that are self-sustaining that are like that. I started noticing it with government. When government employees started driving their government issued vehicles to church. That bothered me, Warren. That really bothered me because as somebody in the media, I understand what branding is. And all of a sudden you start rolling up and people see that you're the county blah, 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 and you got the power to do X, Y, Z. Well, now all of a sudden people treat you different. And if you're rolling up in your, crappy Camaro from the 70s trying to hang on to your mullet, well, you ain't going to get the same treatment. But if you're Joe Dirt rolling up in a county vehicle, people are kissing your butt, offering you their half of a donut afterwards or their donut ball afterwards. Sorry, Catholic, we had donut balls after church. Don't they know I can put the half donuts together as one? I mean, you cut them in half. I'm still going to put them together. Anyway, so I think that this is an issue. This is my libertarian character that I would play on the radio, standing up for small businesses everywhere. That whether you're a fired employee or a company employee or a government employee, you see a logo on a vehicle. You see a sticker on a vehicle that is not of the family. My son is fourth grade honor roll. That is embezzlement. That is abuse. That is a fringe benefit. The IRS should at least be taxing that at the end of the day because it's a major advantage against a small business. Now I'll step down off of my oil well and let you kind of put some sanity there because a lot of people think I'm nuts, Warren. A lot of people think I'm crazy.
I think I agree with you too for the most part. I think that definitely in the IRS you are supposed to claim that. You're supposed to claim that as a benefit if you're utilizing a company vehicle for personal use and driving it to and from work and those types of things. There are some exceptions to that. I work for a promotions company. They encourage me to drive the vehicle as much because it's basically a traveling billboard of our industry. And so there are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, you're exactly right on target there.
So, and that happened, by the way. That was one of the themes that was periodic, whether it was Cooper starting his company or Billy Bob Thornton's character doing it in the finale. All season long, it was using the company's resources for their personal gain, and so that is another storyline that is very relevant in most industries. Speaking of lawyers, we had a couple what they call in professional wrestling face turns. You have your heels and your faces, your good guys and your bad guys. And since professional wrestling is nothing but soap operas, we might as well use it for Landman because that is a soap opera as well. The two lawyers, boy, I tell you what, Nate became my favorite character. The way he stood up to Cammy, the billionaire, the Harris of the oil company. He got offered the president's job in his just very vanilla way. Man, I tell you, those characters that are vanilla, every now and then they're New York vanilla, or they're York vanilla. There's some kind of just extra French vanilla. They just got a little extra pop to them every now and then, Warren. And Nate came out with that. He showed that he probably is the smartest guy in the room.
Well, I think that is also he's looking at it from the standpoint of he's been the main one that's been advising them against doing everything they keep doing. So why would he take over the company when he's been advising them to do everything opposite of what they're doing at this point? So I think he stayed true to his character. His vanilla came through massively in this episode, and then he went down the rocky road route there a little bit and signed up with the CTT and Cattle Company.
He also mentioned that the company was set up to be sold. Can you explain that? Did you understand that at all? Because I understand it on a short-term basis, but to me this seemed like this was more of a that was the plan from day one, and then you just keep adding on. That's the way tech companies operate. Right. They're set up for a 5-year model. The 3 to 5 years, they either got to get a new infusion of cash, or they got to absorb another company, or they got to sell. It's one of the issues people are having with the relationship between governments and tech companies right now. What's your thought about that when it came to the way when Nate said that, Cammy, your company is set up to be sold?
Yeah, I think that's pretty common in a lot of different industries, and it happens in the oil industry as well, where the oil industry, when you're setting up a company to sell, then you want to show your highest possible production numbers at your lowest possible cost. So you tend to neglect things that you normally should put money into if you're going to do a long-term production out of a unit, out of a well, out of a field, whatever. You begin to cut corners here so that your cost versus your production really shows a disparity that would really be enticing to buyers. And that's why, same thing with tech companies, same thing with just about any company you want. And that's why a lot of times when you see these major takeovers, first thing that you see is they come in and they restructure the company, because now they're buying it to keep it in that production, to keep the production going. So they have to restructure the company to go do all the things that you weren't doing leading up to the sale. And I think that what Nate was really referring to is all the things we've been confused upon in this show. The idea that they were taking money for this, for X, and they were using it for Y, and then taking money from Y and using it for Z, and taking money from Z, and they were building this shell company that had the maximum amount of production, but had a lot of internal issues that were not meant to be carried over the long haul. And so in that way, I think that's what he was talking about is, hey, this was set up to show what the maximum production we could get for the minimum cost, and then sell the sucker, get it out the door, and let someone else deal with the headaches of how do you keep it going.
And the other face turn was the Rebecca, who up till the last couple episodes had really been kind of one of the main bad guys, bad girls, heel characters. Again, with my good and evil extreme storytelling lens on here. And so, she turned. She came in, saved the day, saved Cooper, who's supposed to, who's the ultimate good guy, the ultimate face, if you will. He's Hulk Hogan back in the 80s. She came in and saved him, and so therefore she's now aligning herself with the morals of Cooper and I'm sorry, Ariana. Is that her name? Ariana?
Yep.
And I mean, that's right there. That immediately you're now one of the top faces. You're one of the top likable characters now because it's a rape victim. Standing up for the man who's murder. I mean, let's be honest here. What was your thoughts about the female lawyer, Rebecca?
Yeah, I can't figure out what her character is. And we went from her being very progressive against the oil industry to being extremely aggressive and trying to take over the company to being extremely docile and vulnerable in a relationship to now coming in as a hero character. And so there's really not any consistency in her character through 2 seasons. And so she could go anywhere. She could be anything in season 3 coming up because she's joined with Tommy and she's joined with Cooper and TJ, and they're starting this new company up, and she's agreed to go along with them. Um, it could be interesting because she could literally be a heel or a face in the upcoming episode.
Well, I'm gonna put my hippie hat on here, even though it's a pipeline supply company hat. Put my hippie hat on here because I'm a Libra. And I'm going to point out that she's not a Libra because she would be balanced if she was. And so instead, she's Aquarius. She's playing 2 roles, right? She's playing 2 different people. I think that's Aquarius. Gemini, maybe. Gemini's the twins. Either way, she's definitely going to have bipolar medication in the next season because you're right. She's absolutely 2 extremes, which is the definition of somebody who's bipolar. I would like to point out that she does have that relationship with the guy who's going to be on the offshore. So I'm not sure if that's going to be carried over in the next season because she might be the connective tissue to that offshore rig, Warren, the one that you think they've sunset. I don't know if they have. I agree with you. It's going to be more expensive, but man, I tell you what, you think they're going to let that blowout from the Gulf go to waste with all the marketing behind that? I mean, CNN still uses that 2000, was it 2008, 2006? I mean, every 30 years some tanker spills or some blowout happens in the Gulf and the media carries it for 30 years as their marketing. So I see them still next season being on the offshore, and I'm wondering if that relationship in the Aussie is going to be the connective tissue, or do you think they're going to ditch that relationship?
Well, I'm not saying the offshore is not going to be a part of the storyline in the 3rd season. I just don't think they're going to go to the offshore rig. I think that it's going to stay in the legal realm, in the offices. I mean, we haven't hardly gone to any rigs in the 2nd season, and we're right there in the Permian Basin. So why would we go jump on an offshore rig? And I mean, that might make it too much about the oil and gas industry.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So let's get out of the oil and gas industry here and get back to the soap opera storyline here. Just kidding. We'll get into the oil and gas industry here. Ainsley. How do you pronounce that? Ainsley?
Ainsley.
I gotta be honest, I did not have on my bingo card that she was going to be the DEI czar for the oil and gas industry. I had no idea that she was going to be the ESG DEI ambassador for the oil and gas industry, Warren. Did you have that on your bingo card?
I did not have that on my bingo card at all, and it's a little hard for me to follow what happened in this episode with her character because it was almost like she wasn't being selfish for a minute, and That's not Ainsley's character. You're talking about someone who was in just earlier this season was talking with the college about how it's wrong to keep the most beautiful people in school away from the most athletic guys in the school because they would produce better human beings. Is now stepping up in a DEI role like this. It didn't really resonate with me after all the craziness that we've seen out of them this season. Um, but I
Sorry, I
mean,
forgot about that. That eugenics comment that Ainsley was talking about earlier.
what she did this episode directly contradicts what she said in that whole thing. Is that the schools should be for everything should be for the most beautiful athletic people that are out there, and so I don't know that whole scene did not resonate with me as that's Ainsley.
It's going to be an interesting storyline because they've really embraced the stereotypes of that. I mean, with the character they brought in as the DEI representation, are you kidding me? I mean, that central casting, my goodness. I mean, that's what's so funny is that's probably the most insulting DEI role that a DEI person could have.
Yeah.
That's the paradox and the irony behind that. So I got to say that kudos for tackling that because that's a lose-lose situation in my mind. It really is. It's kind of like how they portrayed it. The minute you step in the room, you're done.
Yeah.
As soon, I noticed this in business. This bothered me in business, Warren. This was during the 10 years ago. Um, there was a movement, the millennial movement. It was around this time. And so I'm not blaming the millennials by any means. It was just a timing issue. I noticed in a lot of business meetings, they would talk about how they feel. And that was a huge paradigm shift because if you were trying to talk business, you got blackballed or vetoed or because now you were hurting the person's feelings. You were attacking the person. And for me, it took a few meetings for me to understand what was going on because I'm like, I thought this was a business meeting. I didn't think this was a counseling session, but okay. All right. And so I noticed that I feel that okay. Well, there we are. Sorry. I guess I'm a little bit ranty today.
Yeah, you get lock you up in a cabin under in some snow, and you get a little crabby there.
Minus 24 degrees, man. Crabby, you kidding me? I'm venting. I'm venting my methane gases here. Okay, time for you to vent. Sam Elliott and the physical therapist. She spent the night. She came out in I don't know, three-quarter thong, and boy, I tell you that frat house they have over there that's supposed to be a work camp. I'm not quite sure that the oil industry is going to care too much for the way that the crew camps are being represented, Warren. I mean, it took 10 years to change man camp to crew camp. Come on, Landman, you're not helping the industry out here with that house, that's Animal House. It's a frat house. Go ahead.
But I just want to say this is the one thing that I did get right. I've kind of gone back and forth on. We both acknowledge it's kind of a creepy scenario, and you have earnestly upheld Sam Elliott's role. That he's not engaging, he's keeping his distance. I think this goes exactly the opposite direction. It makes his character the creepy old man that is willing to do whatever the beautiful young lady is willing to do with him, and is excited about that, and it is creepy. And I think it has been since the very beginning until now. I'm a father of four daughters. I've said this: a father of four daughters, a grandfather of eight granddaughters. So maybe that adds a little extra oomph to my outragedness towards this, but I think it is very creepy. I think it reinforces the dirty old man idea and the way that everyone is talking with him, I think it reinforces that all men are dirty old men. And I do not like that storyline at all.
Well, I've made the decision that I'm going to change my tune on this storyline, and we'll see how it goes going into next season. But I've decided that okay, they're obviously they have no problem with it, so I'm gonna try to put their lens on here, and the only thing I can come up with that's going to help me embrace this, Warren, and I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but I got to go with the sugar daddy type of a theory that, I'm not quite to the pimp because Billy Bob is technically the one paying. It's not Sam Elliott, so it's not a true sugar daddy type of a relationship. But that was kind of the only thing I can get behind is that the positive is that I guess, there are people out there that like sugar daddies. So we're going to try to appeal to that niche of a crowd. The majority, that's all I got, Warren. That's the only thing I can come up with in a positive way. And as somebody with 4 daughters and 8 granddaughters, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to sell that to you. It's like snow and an Eskimo at this point. So.
Sugar daddy or not, pimp or not, creepy, yes.
It's I got to be honest, it was definitely not the role I thought Sam Elliott was going to do, but at the end of the day, this new company TTC, right?
CTT.
CTT.
Put Cooper first.
That's right, Cooper first because he's the president. CTT Oil and Cattle does not discriminate against the elderly. In fact, they hired him to now do some of the most sophisticated technology I've seen in my lifetime, where a couple guys can sit in a room, or girls, I guess. I have seen girls in there in my later days when I would do some of the rigs, but early on it was all guys. And they were playing a couple joysticks, and they would put a pipe 2 miles down into the ground, 2 miles that way, and Warren, they would hit a pie plate. They were so precise. And now they're just going to hand those keys over to Sam Elliott there, huh? That's boy, this company, I tell you, they hire from the bedroom with the lawyer, and now it's nepotism, and they got that right. But let's talk a little bit about some of the technology that's probably because this actually was a true oil and gas problem and this could be a great storyline next season. There was a real technology gap. There was a real in fact, they even called it the great. There was like 75% of the oil and gas industry was retiring within the great cruise shift was retiring within a 5-year period. And there was a 5-year period to where there was a technology gap too. So it could be a good storyline, actually, if they choose to go down that path. Not sure if they're going to. It looks like they're going to do the sugar daddy route. What's your thought on the Sam Elliott being hired from an age standpoint, from the technology standpoint? Because that is real oil and gas there.
Well, I think that from a technology standpoint and from an age standpoint, I don't think that's why he was hired at all. I think it's the same reason that, a lot of people, when they start their own business, the first person they hire is their wife or their spouse. And the reason they do it is because then they can pay their spouse a salary, even if they have nothing to do with the company. They can pay their wife a salary, and it's a way to process money in from the company into the family. And I saw that really as nothing more than that. It's a way to get his dad on the payroll to get some of the money into the family. In the last 2 episodes, they've been talking a lot about, even this episode, you don't have any money to retire on. And he's like, you've seen my wife and how she spends. You think I got money to retire on? And so I think that, but it also is interesting if you look at that group that they've got together to form this CTT company. Everyone that's in that group is everyone that Cammie could use to prosecute Billy Bob Thornton's character, Tommy. Everyone that could actually make accusations against him, he brought with him into CTT. So I think that was part of it as well.
It is interesting how there's a couple storylines where the legal route is the more true it becomes, the worse it is for the person involved. Whether it's they mentioned that when Cooper was going through that murder investigation, when the attorney came in and started saying, okay, the more truth that comes out, that's actually the worse for you guys. And so that was kind of interesting. And what you just brought up is that as well with Cammy and Billy Bob. There was a little bit of men versus women going on there. And then at the end, in the last 5 minutes or whatever, when they kind of quickly assembled their team together, they threw that out. But that was a storyline all season long, was this men versus women in power, whether it was the attorney or whether it was Cammy. And the part that I thought was interesting was that the women were making decisions with emotion and the men were making decisions with logic, if you will. It's almost like men are from Mars and women are from Venus. They should write a book on something like that, Warren. What was your thoughts on that? How they're trying to do the man and woman in a power situation?
Yeah, I differ a little bit with you. I think they were both acting out of emotion, just very different emotions. I think the women are predominantly being portrayed in a protectorate role where they're trying to protect their families, they're trying to protect their relationships, trying to protect, whatever it is, integrity of the company, whatever. And I think the men are just as emotional, but it comes across as logic, but they're emotional and they're acting out of pride. They're acting out of, Cammy has hurt Tommy. So what does Tommy do? He takes her toys. He goes after her. He takes her toys, and he even said, I want to see if I have one more home run in me. That's a statement of pride. It's the idea that you dismissed me. I'm going to prove to you that I'm the one that could have saved you.
So the next question I got two more. We're going to get into the coyote last because they kept
What
their.
what coyote?
Well, wasn't there a coyote or no? I thought there was a.
If there was, I missed it.
Yeah, I think there was at the very end. At the
Okay.
very end, there was. Yeah, and he said not today. We'll get into that. I'm pretty sure there was a coyote because I know there was horses.
There's
And
horses in there. Oh.
yeah, but I thought there was a coyote then after the horses cleared or something like that. But anyway, we'll get into that in a second here. But um, the ag, the oil and ag, that part of the thing, and they kept bringing that up. I think that was on purpose, and I think this is a bigger storyline that is going to be next season as well. And I found it very interesting that they kept dropping this because, 2012. So what we're talking about, 14 years ago? 14 years ago, Warren, my third article was actually about whether the oil and gas industry was turning into the agriculture industry. Because up in North Dakota, where they've got the core samples and the proven reserves, I could see back then it was pretty much a price play. I mean, this was like, oh, corn's at this much a bushel. Okay, we're planting corn this year. It became very much, the conversations that I would hear were very much like the conversations I heard growing up in ag. So I started putting that together, and the industry did not like that at all. Did not like that at all. Because there's a wildcat industry and it's more complex than that. And we don't take subsidies and we're not reliant on government and ag is this and that. And well, the news came out over the week on actually a Friday that Continental Resources was going to halt in the Bakken oil field. And Harold Hamm flat out said the numbers don't work. And that's no different than a soybean farmer or a cattle farmer, man. It's the same exact thing they say. So it got me thinking. And then when Landman came on and they kept saying the ag thing and the farm thing connected with the oil and gas industry, and the way the oil and gas industry is connected with the ethanol industry and the carbon sequestration industry, it got me wondering if this Landman is now going to kind of bridge the ag and energy together in a way that I was pontificating 15 years ago. And I, I look at it, whether it's through biomass or whether it's through ethanol or whether it's through whatever it is, Warren. I mean, they've been connected for a long time, long time. I mean, so what is your thoughts about that? Do you think they're trying to tell a bigger story, that they're connecting ag and energy together in the same way they're trying to tell the story that the cartel is funding all the oil industry?
Well, I don't know what they're trying to do because, as I've said many times on this show, all of my predictions have been wrong. So I don't know what they're trying to do. But last episode, when I responded, I accused Taylor Sheridan of not knowing anything about the oil industry because of all the things he didn't cover. And this is probably the one area that I'm most disappointed because all of his shows, not all of them, but the vast majority of his shows revolve around ranching and agriculture and those types of backgrounds. And he's shown in those shows that he knows a lot about it. He knows a lot. And so it's been a real disappointment to me because there are some great storylines that have to do with actually being a landman and having to deal with farmers and ranchers to get access to their properties, to get the mineral rights. Because, the farmer and rancher doesn't always own the mineral rights. So sometimes there is a lot of hostility between the surface owner and the mineral rights owner and the oil and gas company that is coming out to get the resource. There's stories of landowners coming to the gate with a shotgun, coming to the front door with a shotgun, firing over the heads of landmen. There's some great storylines that I think could have been utilized in this show that are real, that have to do with the landman and have to do with actual issues that happen in the oil and gas industry on a regular basis. And so I think that that's where Taylor Sheridan has missed the boat. I hope that they do bring that back in. As far as ethanol and carbon sequestration and those types of things, that's going to be hard to do in Midland because there's not a lot of ag land around Midland. It's predominantly a desert. There's not a lot of irrigated land. Corn takes a ton of water, and so there's not a lot of that type of agriculture that happens. There is a lot of ranching, and so we'll see. But I would love for him to bring more of that into the storyline because that's what landmen actually have to deal with.
A couple storylines that are real that could easily be an episode or 3-episode arc is in Texas, the ranchers, they stopped ranching because they were selling the water to the oil companies. They were making more money selling water than they ever would ranching. And, there's pros and cons to that, Warren, like anything. There's pros and cons to it. From the landowner standpoint, the mineral owners, the water rights people, they'd love it. They get paid, and now they don't have to work as hard. They can actually enjoy the fruits of their labor. From a production standpoint and whatever else, you can insert your own opinions and your own beliefs accordingly. But from the persons who had the opportunity presented to them, yeah, I'll just sell my water to the oil company, and I don't have to worry about getting up every day and doing chores. So that's a real story. And the other one is that a lot of mineral owners are kids. And so you could have 16 kids that share all the minerals, and the oil company's got to go get all 16 of them to agree to it. And you could have one person that's the Greta Thunberg of the world, man, the biggest environmentalist on the planet. And she or he, I say she because I said Greta, they've got to understand their own values versus the money. Could you imagine that storyline, Warren?
Yeah.
You got, go ahead. Yeah.
It happens all the time. That happens all the time.
Right.
I've seen where, you have 64 people that split the mineral rights somewhere. And you got some of them that say, it's not worth it. The amount of money I'm going to get from it, that's not going to make any difference because I'm only getting 1/64th of what's going to come. And so you have those battles all the time. And then you have other where you have 3 brothers or 3 sisters or whatever, 3 siblings that have the mineral rights, and you have one that's anti-oil, and the other 2 want it, and they actually take each other to court to get the rights, to get the mineral rights. And you have landowners that try to stop the mineral rights owners from being able to get their land, and that goes to court because you can't stop someone from getting their mineral rights. And so those are all valid storylines that can bring in conflict, can bring in, or definitely try relationships. And they all revolve around what a landman actually does.
The other storyline too, before we get to the coyote, is uh, the traffic. That obviously it was very Hollywood-esque. The timing of it, when he says to the good Lord above, "Rain it down on me," and all of a sudden the trucks and accidents starts happening. To me, the timing of it took away from the reality, meaning that people are going to say, "Oh, that's just Hollywood." Oh no, that's Midland. That scene can happen at any time, any day, anywhere in that area, and that's the one thing that there's more storylines of traffic accidents, truck accidents, cars flipping, tire blowouts, because you don't have much room to move, and that traffic is flowing. And that is a very real thing. In Chicago, by the way, Joliet, where the shipping yard is, same thing. You get into some certain areas of traffic, and you don't have much room to maneuver. But down in the Midland, especially, that's a very dangerous traffic area, and it's tough to get into that. But it's very real, Warren. Your thoughts on the Hollywood-esque portion of their traffic accidents, which I think they should do more of, actually.
Yeah, well, obviously it was Hollywood-esque in the regards to it happened right after he said that, and they were making a point. But you're exactly right on the traffic. You got I-10 and you got I-20 that both run through southern Texas down there. I believe they were at one point, and I don't know if they still are, the two fastest interstates in the United States. And if you've ever been from Midland, in between Midland and Dallas Fort Worth on I-20 there. If you've ever coming out of Midland headed that way, that is one of the busiest interstates you will ever be on. I've been there all hours of the night, all times of the day, and it is always packed. And it's packed with large vehicles, large trucks. You have oil rigs that are going down the road at 50 miles an hour, and then you got other people that are going down the road at over 100 miles an hour. And so it is one of my least favorite roads to drive, and I do it a couple times a year, every year. But you're exactly right. The traffic down there is horrendous on the interstate.
And the biggest difference, so people can understand, is the heavy equipment. Listen, I've been stuck in more Minneapolis traffic jams than I care to count. I lived out in California for a year, so I was on the 405 Orange Crush every day for a year, where literally you would sit for 45 minutes and you can get out of your car and suntan on your roof because you don't move, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about semis. We're talking about dump trucks. We're talking about things that if they clip you, your car's done. I mean, that's the issue that at hand. And like I said, the only thing I could compare it to was Chicago, where you've got 6 lanes of traffic with semis in each one, and you're the only car. Whereas Minneapolis and in the 405 Crush out in California, it's all cars around you. It's not semis. It's not, big trailers. That's the other thing. You got trailers and semis hauling trailers. Oh, forget about it. And then you get a FedEx with a four banger in there. Oh, forget about it, man. And those are okay. So let's get to the coyote where he says not today. Now, Warren, from my memory, the horses parted ways, and then there was a lone wolf coyote there, and he took a drag out of his heater or cigarette, whatever they're called nowadays, and he said, not today, not today. And I took that as, hey, vacation today. You can come eat me tomorrow, but not today, type of a thing. Reset some of that symbolism from last season and what a coyote would represent, because it was a coyote, not a wolf, right? Coyote.
Yeah,
Yeah, because a coyote is majorly different than a wolf.
yeah. And coyotes are they're pack animals. They travel in packs. They hunt in packs. You tend to see them out by themselves, but they hunt in packs and they have communities. But a coyote is a scavenger. A coyote lives off the ground. They're predominantly scavengers that scavenge for their food. And we saw in last season where the coyote was a lot more dominant than it was this season, from the standpoint of showed him as a lone wolf idea that is out there. We saw the symbology of the coyotes when Cammie's husband dies and she falls down crying, and you hear coyotes, a pack of coyotes howling in the background, talking about the leader that kind of sharing the idea the leader of the pack is gone. And so I thought that there was a lot of symbolicness of the coyote last season. I think we kind of lost a little bit of that this season. And I'm not exactly sure what it represents at this point, other than maybe that the coyote is a scavenger and the coyote will do whatever a coyote has to do to survive, even chew off their own leg if it's caught in a trap. They'll do whatever they have to do to survive. That's about the closest I can get.
Well, according to ScreenRant.com, their review, and keep in mind, I'm sure their review people are just like Warren and I, but they're probably more in tune. They might even know some of the people personally. I don't know. I've never, Warren, I'm not a reader of Screen Rant. Are you? Do you get their monthly subscription?
No, I get enough rants from everybody
Okay.
around. I don't need any more.
So ScreenRant.com was one of the first four Google searches under the news category. So they are sophisticated enough to get picked up by the Google News algorithm. Here's what they say. At the very end of Landman season 2, Tommy and Angela spoke in the backyard, and Tommy saw a coyote. He told the coyote, "No, you can't have today, bud. Today is mine." And it was somewhat odd note to end Landman season 2, but there were plenty of symbolic meaning in that interaction. Keep in mind, Landman season 1 also ended with Tommy speaking to a coyote in the backyard. At the end of Landman season 1, Tommy shooed away the coyote, told him that they kill coyotes around here. Back then, the coyote symbolized Tommy being trapped, both by Galliano and the oil industry as a whole. He, like the coyote, was in grave danger. In season 2, the coyote still represents danger and death, but Tommy notably tells it he has won the day and escaped death. So I guess that's kind of what I said a little bit, where, sorry, dude, not today. You can come eat me tomorrow, huh?
They got a lot more time on their hands than I do.
Well, they get paid to do
Oh, okay.
these. They get paid to do these reviews. They don't just do it out of their goodness of the heart for the oil and gas industry, so that we can help decipher and detect. Actually, to be take away my snarkiness for a second here, but real life, Warren. This is I'm starting to really get a kick out of the real life soap opera that's happening here with this show, because season 1 the industry was up in arms against it. We were, that and industry leaders were upset at how it made the industry look, and they didn't know anything about it. They had the wrong wrench and that sort of thing. And we took our art as vanilla as we can and insert our jokes in there as much as we can, ride both sides ways. And then season 2 comes out and the industry's all behind it. Hey, you bet. Well, here's some money to support it and all this. And then there's nothing about the industry in this season. It's all about these extremely controversial interpersonal relationships. They're folding in the cartel. Yesterday, the New York Times comes out with an editorial, and the headline says what you said last week, essentially. This show has nothing to do with the oil industry, but then they took it a step further and said that it's not positive for the industry. So the New York Times is already setting the narrative that Taylor Sheridan might be kind of flexing his muscles against the oil and gas industry. And so it's funny how the industry was against it. Now they're for it. Now next season, what's going on here now? If the show is coming out publicly saying, yeah, we're not with you guys. So A little bit of a real life storyline going on here, Warren. So I know you don't like to comment on those, but either way, I thought I'd make you aware of it, what's going on in the industry. So overall, your thoughts on the season?
Overall, stick by what I said. I don't think this is about the oil and gas industry hardly at all. Became the B-roll for this season. It definitely went to the interpersonal relationships. And while that has been very positive for the show in adding viewers and increasing viewers, if you go watch and look at the comments following the show, I saw one where a guy commented that the F bomb was thrown out 67 times in this episode. And then everybody began to reply to him. And you begin to look at those replies and what their replies. It was amazing to me how many women defended the usage of the F bomb 67 times in a show. It was amazing to me how many of the women comments actually defended that. And so you're seeing a growth in the women's audiences because it is more relational. It has turned more into a soap opera, relational soap opera type of a show. And I agree with the New York Times. I think you said it was New York Times. I agree with the article that you were just referencing that that's not necessarily a positive for our industry because outside of Cooper and Ariana and Nate, I don't know that we really have anyone in the show that we want to be representatives of the oil industry as a whole and the way that the oil industry actually does things. And I think, while all of those characters do exist somewhere out there, they are not the standard in the oil and gas industry.
But perception is reality. And this show is now the modern day PR machine for the oil and gas industry. And that's the one thing that I do find very remarkable about it because they have been able to bridge into an audience that they said they were trying to reach for a long time, but I challenge that by, and I've mentioned this before with the bowl games. You do a lot of statewide sponsorships that align with my criticism of the oil and gas industry, which is a bowl game, because at the end of the day, you and I and our neighbors are end users of the oil and gas industry. If we're going out as industry spokespeople and saying that 98% of everything you touch on a daily basis is the oil and gas industry, then you have to understand that 98% of the population is your end customer. Yeah. And that's the one thing I think the industry, kind of missed, because if you can get, in the media, I'll give the best example I can give with this, Warren, because what's happening right now in the media is that the advertising world is changing. The newspaper industry went under. Radio stations are dropping like flies. Television stations are going under. Obviously, nobody's reporting it because if a tree falls in a forest, then nobody's left to report it. Did it fall? Right? That's kind of the new way of going. And in the media, what we've learned, for example, and I'll just use a restaurant. Okay, let's say we used to get $100,000 a year from KFC. Just throw that out there. Yum Brands, KFC would do that. In the newspaper industry, that was really standard because, you get inserts and you got to plan things ahead of time and all. Same thing with radio. Hey, we got a sale going on chicken this week. Let's get out there and get there, blah, blah, blah. Well, now we're at a place where, like KFC, they no longer have to advertise to you and I. So the traditional media no longer gets those dollars. And KFC now just has to advertise to Alexa. KFC just now has to advertise to Google, because you and I as an end consumer, we're asking AI and we're asking the internet, I want some chicken. Where should I go get chicken? And if KFC has Google or Alexa as their customer, that's who's telling us to go get chicken at KFC. Does that make sense, Warren? What's happening? The shift there? That's
yeah.
And that's now happening in some of the other industries too. And I'm a little bit more sensitive and attuned to it because generally communications is the first one to go through a paradigm shift. And back in 2008 to 2012, 99% of the newspapers filed bankruptcy. And when you have a 100-year monopoly like a newspaper had in every town, that's an incredible paradigm shift. And that's what the oil and gas industries just got done going through, their own paradigm shift. And so getting back to the bigger story here, I do think the oil and gas industry needs to be very cautious of season 3. I might even recommend throwing a few more experts Taylor Sheridan's way to help, because I think that this show is now the number one PR machine for the oil and gas industry. It can go either way, Warren. It can go either way. Your thoughts?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that I last season I said over and over and over again that I thought it was a net positive, because it has people talking about the oil and gas industry. And everywhere I went, people asked me if I'd seen it, and it started the conversation, and they wanted to know what was real and what wasn't real. And this season, it still has people talking about it, but we're not talking about what's real and what's not real and what actually happens in the oil field. We're talking about relationships and the type of people that are in the oil and gas industry. And that's not as positive a conversation as we were having last season when we were talking about the industry itself, rather than the type of people in the industry and the relationships that are there. And so I think that puts us in a precarious place where if Tommy and Angela are the identified as that's what oil and gas is, that's a very misleading understanding of our industry and is not a net positive.
It's interesting too how they flipped the morals this season too. When you take a look at last season, I think there was a couple deaths by accidents. They weren't murder, where a guy literally got beaten to death, bludgeoned to death. I was just so shocked that they killed him, Warren. That they basically had Cooper kill the guy, because that is, the guy's in a coma. He's not dead, but they killed him off like that. That is a crossing of the line of sand. It's a 10 commandment, for crying out loud. Now all the good that you just did, there are some people that will never look at what Cooper did as honorable, no matter what, because they tried to pull him off, but he kept going to where he murdered him. And that's what the police were trying to bring forward. And from a morality standpoint, this season has really changed the morality of the characters, in my opinion, to be more shades of gray and more like the cartel than they were anything what they were trying to portray. All the work they did with Cooper to be the all-American honest, they just got rid of it right there. In this episode, they took it out. There are going to be some people that will never look at him the same. Some people are going to look at him more of an honorable type of a person, but that erodes away through time. It does. But what are your thoughts on the morality switch? Because that's, we've really never talked about that this season.
Yeah, no, I think that it definitely, we've talked a little bit about it when switching the morality from how we viewed the cartel last season to how we view the oil industry this season, and how those roles really switched from last season to this season. And I ranted off all last season about how the oil industry is not the cartel, and the second season definitely has made them the cartel. And in many ways, it's changed the characters to epitomize what a cartel morality would be. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. But I think this show is extremely unpredictable in trying to figure out where the storyline's going. So much so that Billy Bob Thornton couldn't even predict where it was going to go. After the first episode came out, I read an article where he did an interview. And in that interview, they asked him, where are the rants? Because last season, he was full of rants that were, they were what everybody was talking about, what everybody was sharing on social media. In the first episode, he didn't have one. So people were asking, and he said, well, the rants are coming. There's going to be a lot of those this season. I don't remember a single rant this season like what we saw last season. And
They,
so,
they were there, but they were manufactured, so they lost. They didn't have impact. You know,
right.
it's yeah. I mean that's the problem with when you try to manufacture something that was organic.
Yeah.
The success is because it's organic. It wasn't because it was a rant. It was because they weren't trying to make it a rant, but it turned into one. And by the way, for the people that comment about the number of F bombs that were in the show, okay, well, first of all, have you ever seen Bad Santa? Because there's more F bombs than there are other words. If they cleaned up the language in Bad Santa starring Billy Bob Thornton, it'd be a 3-minute movie. Okay. So keep in mind there's that. And secondly, I'm sorry, but Sam Elliott does sound pretty cool when he drops an F bomb. It just, I don't know what it is about it. It's still that guttural, that old school Sam Elliott voice, man. It just, he gets a free pass with the F bombs in my world. But
Well, I love Sam Elliott's voice, but I'm just going to say if he's got a 20-year-old girl under his arm when he drops the F bomb, it's still creepy.
yeah, that's I still think it's going to be interesting where that one goes, man. Well, I appreciate this. Well, we may have to do a digesting episode here in the next week or two of things that we forgot or things that we want to talk about. But that's going to wrap it up for the Landman Season 2 review and reaction series. Warren Martin with Kansas Strong, myself, Jason Spiess. We do have a discount link available on the articles and different reviews if you want to go ahead and do that. I have no idea what the discount link is this month. I got an email from them. It changes every month. So just click on it and see what the month special is and that kind of thing. All right. Thank you, Warren. We'll be chatting down the line.
Sounds good.